When I woke up from emergency surgery, the first thing I saw wasn't my husband's face. It was a fraud alert from my bank. My RBC Visa had been charged $14,380 to a luxury lakeside resort in Muskoka while I was unconscious on the operating table. I called my husband in tears, and he barely paused before he laughed. "It's just a long weekend, babe," he said. "You're in good hands, relax." The call ended before I could say another word. I'd been rushed to Sunnybrook by ambulance the evening before, doubled over with the worst pain I had ever felt in my life. By the time the doctors confirmed a ruptured appendix, I was already being prepped for emergency surgery. I remember signing the consent forms with my hand shaking so badly I could barely hold the pen. My husband stood beside me in the hallway and squeezed my fingers. He told me everything would be fine. He said he would be right there when I woke up. He wasn't. I lay in the recovery room trying to piece together the fraud alert on my screen. $14,000, Muskoka Pines Retreat. I had never heard of the place. I opened my banking app and scrolled through the charges. There was the booking fee placed 2 nights ago. Time stamped at 8:47 in the evening, less than an hour after the ambulance had pulled away from our driveway. Then came a series of smaller charges stretching across the past 4 days, a catering order, a boat rental, a wine delivery, a spa treatment package. My stomach dropped, and I switched to Instagram. The first photo stopped every thought in my head. My husband stood at the end of a wooden dock with his arm around his sister, both of them holding glasses of white wine. Behind them, a massive A-frame cottage sat at the edge of a mirror-calm lake. The sky was gold and pink. His brother had posted a video of them kayaking in the morning mist. His parents appeared in another photo at a long outdoor table, covered with charcuterie boards, grilled salmon, and bottles of wine I recognized as expensive even from a thumbnail. His cousin had captioned her post, "Long weekend done right, cottage goals." He wasn't handling things at home. He wasn't sitting in any waiting room the way he had promised. He was on a 4-day lake vacation with his entire family, and every single dollar of it had come from my credit card. I called him back. He answered on the 3rd ring, voice easy and warm in a way that made my chest tighten. "Adrian," I said. I couldn't manage more than his name at first. "Hey, how are you feeling? Surgery went okay? Why is there a $14,000 charge on my visa?" There was a pause, not a guilty one, more like someone adjusting to a mild inconvenience. "Look," he said, "we'd had this booking on hold for months. His sister organized the whole thing back in February. If we canceled last minute, we'd lose the full deposit. You're in the hospital, you're being taken care of, there wasn't anything any of us could do from here anyway. You told me you'd stay." I said I'd be there for the surgery, I was, and then the doctors said you were stable so you left. I didn't want to lose the deposit. He said it like that was a complete sentence, like it explained everything. I couldn't speak for a moment. "You used my credit card," I said. "You're my wife, our finances are shared." "I didn't say you could." He sighed. The kind of sigh that means the other person thinks you're being difficult. "Can we talk about this when you're feeling better? You just had surgery, you need to rest. We'll be back Sunday night." He ended the call before I could respond. I sat with the phone in my lap for a long time. The monitor beside my bed beeped in its slow, steady rhythm. Through the window at the end of the hall, the Toronto skyline sat gray and ordinary under a flat May sky. I called his sister next. She answered with background noise I recognized immediately, wind-off water, laughter, the sound of a screen door swinging shut. "I just saw the charge on my credit card," I said. "Oh," I figured Adrian would explain. She didn't sound uncomfortable. She sounded mildly inconvenienced, the way you sound when someone asks you to repeat something obvious. "Look, we had 12 people coming up. It would have been wrong to cancel on everyone at the last minute. I was in emergency surgery. I know, and I hope you feel better soon, I really do. But it would have been a waste to lose the whole booking, because of bad timing." I almost asked her to say that again. Bad timing. As though a ruptured appendix was something I had scheduled poorly. "You spent my money without asking me," I said. "You'll recover, you'll both earn it back," she added, just before she hung up. "Get some rest." His brother was worse. He laughed almost the moment he heard my voice. "Come on," he said. "It's a long weekend, you'd have said yes anyway." I was unconscious. "Well, Adrian knew you well enough to know you wouldn't want everyone to miss out. He said you wouldn't mind." He was wrong. "Listen, by the time you're out of there, you'll probably be back on your feet. Don't make a whole thing of it." He hung up while I was still forming my next sentence. I called 2 more relatives after that. One didn't pick up. One told me it had been a hard year for the family, and that the cottage was something they had all needed. No one asked how the surgery had gone. No one asked if I had been scared. No one asked whether it had been frightening to lie in that hallway signing consent forms while nurses moved quickly around me. I put the phone down on the blanket and looked at the ceiling. There is a particular kind of silence that a hospital room holds at night. The building breathes around you, carts rolling somewhere down the hall, a voice on an intercom in the distance, the low hum of machines, but inside your room, it is still in a way that presses gently in. I lay in that stillness and tried to decide if what I was feeling was heartbreak or something older and quieter. Something like finally understanding what had always been true. The next morning, my best friend Wendy appeared in the doorway. She was carrying 2 large Tim Hortons coffees and wearing the expression she always gets when she already knows everything and has already decided what she thinks about it. She was the only visitor I had in 5 days. She sat beside me for 3 hours that first morning. She didn't ask me to explain myself or tell her what I was planning. She just sat there, which was more than my husband had managed to do. When one of the nurses came in to check my vitals, Wendy made easy conversation and smiled like she had known the staff for years. When the nurse left, she looked at me and said quietly, "You know what you need to do." I did. That afternoon, I opened my laptop and requested a full statement on my RBC account. The charges were laid out in black and white, each one timestamped. The first transaction, the resort booking, had been placed at 8:47 p.m. My ambulance had left our street at 8:12, 35 minutes. He had waited 35 minutes after I was taken away, before charging the cottage to my credit card. I downloaded everything. I organized the statements into folders, highlighted each transaction, and cross-referenced the amounts against the resort's public rate sheet. Then I went through my phone. I saved every text message. I kept every voicemail. I took screenshots of every photo and video the family had posted online before anyone thought to make their accounts private. I had documentation of all of it within 48 hours. From the hospital's business center, I printed what I needed. A patient services coordinator helped me understand the process for requesting medical records. Within 2 days, I had my admission notes, my surgical report, and my anesthesia log, a paper trail showing exactly when I had been unconscious, exactly when I had been under general anesthesia, exactly when I had been in no position to authorize a single transaction. My husband arrived at the hospital on the 4th day. He walked in wearing a quarter zip from the resort gift shop with Muskoka Pines Retreat printed across the chest in small serif letters. He had that specific kind of color in his face that comes from 4 days of sun and lake air. He was carrying a paper bag. "Hey," he said, smiling, "you look better." I looked at him and said nothing. He reached into the bag and pulled out a candle wrapped in craft paper with a pine sprig tucked under the twine. The resort's printed on the label. It probably cost $18 at the gift shop, which meant it had also been charged to my Visa. "Thought you'd like something nice for when you get home," he said. "Cedar and wood smoke. Really lovely." I picked it up, read the label, set it back down. "You bought me a souvenir with my own credit card," I said. He shrugged. The shrug of someone who genuinely does not see the problem. It's the thought that counts, right? He sat down and took out his phone. He had hundreds of photos. He went through them one by one. The dock at sunset, the dinner table arranged with candles, a bonfire on the beach, his brothers sliding sideways off a paddleboard into the lake. He laughed at that one until his eyes watered. "You really should have been there," he said. Then he caught himself. Under different circumstances, obviously. But the lake was perfect, completely still in the mornings. After a while, his mood shifted and he started complaining about the resort, how the boat rental was overpriced, how the catering company had charged too much for the charcuterie, how the Wi-Fi cut out every evening, just when he wanted to watch something. I sat in a hospital bed 4 days after emergency surgery and listened to my husband complain about the cost of a vacation he had paid for with my credit card. I felt something in me go very, very quiet. His sister and his brother arrived an hour later with a supermarket balloon bouquet and a box of Turtles chocolates. His brother clapped his hands together, like he was announcing good news. "She lives," he said. They talked over each other for 20 minutes. Who had caught the biggest fish off the dock? What they had made for breakfast on the last morning. How his sister had spotted a vintage canoe paddle at a shop in Port Carlton and almost bought it as a joke. Every smiling story felt like confirmation of what I already knew. They had enjoyed themselves thoroughly, they felt no guilt about it, and they genuinely believed that a balloon bouquet and a box of chocolates covered whatever ground remained. Not one of them said sorry. Not one of them asked if I had been frightened. Not one of them acknowledged, even sideways, that they had taken a vacation on my money while I was sedated on an operating table. When they left, I opened my laptop. The next morning, Wendy drove me to a branch of my bank on the way home from discharge. I sat across from a fraud specialist with my printed statements in a folder on my lap. She looked through everything carefully. She noted the timestamps. She asked whether I had authorized any of the charges and whether I had been medically capable of doing so when the first transaction was placed. I set my hospital records on the desk beside the bank statements. She looked at both documents for a moment. Then she made several notes and told me the case would be referred to the fraud investigation team. 2 days later, I was in a lawyer's office. She spread my materials across the conference table. Bank records, surgical notes, anesthesia log, text messages, screenshots, and spent the better part of an hour reading through everything. When she looked up, she said, "This is thoroughly documented. Don't say anything to him yet. Keep everything exactly as it is." I kept everything exactly as it was. There was one detail I hadn't yet checked. When the fraud investigator brought it up, I had almost forgotten I'd mentioned it during our first conversation. "You said you have a camera at the front entrance?" We had two, one covering the front door, one in the living room pointed toward the main hallway. We pulled the footage together. The investigator loaded it on his monitor and we watched in silence. The timestamp read 8:14 p.m., 2 minutes after the ambulance had left our street. My husband came back to the house alone. He walked through the front door, crossed to the kitchen counter where I kept my handbag, opened it, and removed my wallet. He flipped it open, took out my RBC Visa and my backup MasterCard, put both cards into his pocket, and set the wallet back inside the bag. He did not rush. He was not frantic or confused. He moved the way you move when you know exactly what you are looking for and exactly where to find it. The investigator paused the video. "Don't mention any of this to him," he said. "Don't change anything. Let things run as they are." I nodded. I had become very good at letting things run as they were. I went home. I made dinner. I asked my husband about work. I listened when he talked about a project he had been managing, a colleague who had annoyed him, whether we should try somewhere new for Canada Day weekend. He seemed relaxed, at ease. He had probably concluded that my quiet meant I had processed my feelings and come through the other side. On a Tuesday morning 3 weeks after my discharge, the investigator called. "We're ready to proceed," he said. "Do you want to go ahead?" Yes. That afternoon I signed the final paperwork. I disputed every unauthorized transaction. The booking deposit, the boat rental, the catering order, the wine delivery, the spa package, the gift shop candle. I listed each one. Nothing was left out. The bank placed restrictions on the shared accounts and suspended both credit cards in my name while the investigation moved forward. I was in the backyard with a cup of tea when my husband called. "My card got declined," he said the moment I picked up. "No hello. At the gas station. What did you do?" I reported unauthorized charges. "You froze everything? Are you serious right now? I can't access anything. This is completely..." He stopped. I heard him breathe. "We'll talk about this tonight." He hung up. His sister called 11 minutes later. Her voice had a different quality than I was used to. Less assured, more careful. "Someone from the resort called me," she said. "They asked who authorized the booking. They asked for the name on the credit card." "What's going on?" "There's a fraud investigation." "A fraud investigation? You called the police?" "I reported it to the bank and the appropriate authorities." "You need to call them and explain it was a family situation. This is going to blow everything out of proportion. I can't stop an investigation that's already been filed." She hung up. His brother texted 15 minutes after that. "What is happening? Someone from a financial crimes unit just called me." I didn't reply. The family group chat, which I had been quietly left in because my husband had never bothered to remove me after adding me 2 Christmases ago, went into complete disarray over the next hour. I watched the messages come in from my kitchen table. What did he tell her exactly? "Someone needs to fix this before it goes further. I only went because he said it was sorted. Who even legally authorized the booking? This is way too far. They were not worried about me. They were worried about themselves. And for the first time since waking up in that recovery room, I felt something close to steady ground. When my husband came home that evening, the front door hit the wall on its way open. You want to explain what you've done? I was at the kitchen table. I didn't get up. I reported fraud, I said. That's what you do when someone uses your credit card without permission. I'm your husband, we share finances. You took my wallet out of my purse 2 minutes after my ambulance left. He went still. There's a camera in the living room, I said. You walked past it at 8:14 p.m. on a Tuesday and took both my cards. He didn't speak for a long moment. I was going to pay it back, he finally said. The investigation is already filed. I'd recommend speaking with someone. He called his sister from the next room with the door half closed, but I could hear everything. She said she had never agreed to anything that would cause legal problems. His brother called while they were still talking and said he had only gone because my husband had told everyone I wouldn't care. My husband said he had never said that. His brother said he absolutely had. His sister said she had not been the one to arrange the booking, and she was not taking responsibility for something she had no part in organizing. They argued for 40 minutes, voices rising and then dropping and then rising again. I made dinner. 3 days later, my lawyer called. The investigators had obtained the family group chat through the resort's booking records. She read me one exchange from the night I was taken to hospital. His sister at 8:20 p.m. She's in emergency surgery. He said it's serious. My husband, yeah, so we might as well head up. Nothing we can do from here. His brother 40 minutes later. She's under, she won't know until she wakes up. Let's not waste the booking. I closed my eyes. They had discussed it. They had known I was in emergency surgery, that I was unconscious, that I would not be aware of what they were doing. They had made a decision, not a careless one, a considered one. I had not simply been forgotten. I had been accounted for and set aside. Reading those words in an official report was painful in the way that confirmation always is, but it also dissolved the last of whatever doubt had been holding things in suspension. There was nothing left to wonder about. Nothing to hope had been a misunderstanding. The divorce proceedings were straightforward in the way that things become straightforward when the documentation is thorough. My husband's lawyer argued that as spouses we had shared financial access, and that he had acted on a reasonable assumption of consent. The judge reviewed the bank records. She reviewed the surgical timeline. She reviewed the security footage. She read the group chat messages that had been entered into evidence. She was quiet for a long time before she spoke. She said this was not a matter of shared marital finances used in good faith. The evidence showed a deliberate decision to access my funds during a period when I was medically incapacitated and unable to protect myself. That decision had been discussed in advance and carried out with full knowledge of my condition. I sat in that courtroom and felt the ground come up solid under me for the first time in months. My bank restored my accounts completely. Every fraudulent charge was reversed. New cards were issued. New passwords and security settings applied across every account I held. The resort cooperated with the financial investigation and required several family members to repay costs connected to their portion of the booking directly. My husband's settlement terms reflected the full extent of what the court had found. He lost considerably more than a long weekend. He lost the marriage, a significant share of the financial stability he had relied on, and whatever standing he had held with the family members, who pivoted quickly once their own names appeared in official records. I received messages in the weeks that followed. Through mutual friends, through my lawyer's office, from relatives who said they hadn't understood the full situation, that they would have acted differently if they had known. I did not respond to any of them. I found an apartment in a neighborhood I had always liked, but we had never lived in. I filled it slowly, with furniture I chose on my own and a row of plants along the kitchen windowsill that I wasn't entirely certain I could keep alive, but decided to try anyway. Wendy came over the first Saturday with takeout and sat on my new couch and didn't say very much, which was exactly what I needed. Some mornings I think about that moment in the recovery room. The dry mouth, the steady beeping. The fraud alert covering my phone screen like a mistake someone had made carelessly, except it was not careless at all. At the time, it felt like the floor giving way beneath everything I had believed about my life, and the people I had built it around. Now I think about it differently. If that charge had never appeared, I might have spent years inside a version of my life I no longer recognized, quietly absorbing dismissal, accepting the laugh that told me to relax when the last thing I needed was to relax. Learning to take up less space because it was easier than understanding why I was always being asked to. The surgery repaired what was broken in my body. What happened in the days after opened something I had been keeping carefully closed. Losing the people who were never really there, it turns out, is not a loss at all. It is the beginning of learning what belonging is actually supposed to feel like.